Hi folks, I'm a fashion designer and I bought as many Olympics uniforms as my budget would allow, and today I'm going to be reviewing them with you. I've got items from Canada, the US, France, and the Netherlands. I'm going to be reviewing 3 different elements: the quality of the craftsmanship and the materials, the suitability of the item for a winter activity, and I have some fun ones planned for you, and as someone who works in the fashion industry, whether I think the price is justified or whether I think it's a ripoff. Let's start with Canada. That's where I live. This is Team Canada's podium jacket. It's designed by Lululemon. I thought I was going to hate it because I wasn't super impressed by Team Canada's kit overall. The opening ceremony look very much confused me with this, I believe it's a quilted vest situation that I have heard compared to intestines. Anyway, I thought this podium jacket was going to be, at best, a boring little puffer jacket, and at worst, some bizarre, hideous thing. But it's actually not such a bad little jacket. Let's see how it holds up in the great outdoors. I am on one of the largest skateways in the world, the Rideau Canal in Ottawa, Canada. It is about minus 15 degrees. Beautiful blue sky and sunshine today. Now, I'm not skating because I'm actually 8 months pregnant, so we're just here for the vibes today. Now, this is not a bad little jacket, actually. Frankly, I'm quite impressed by it. Obviously, it doesn't have a hood, so that's something I should have kept in mind before going outside. It's not really warm enough for an extreme cold environment, but for what I'm doing right now, it's sunny, low wind, only minus 15. It might have even gone up to minus 12 or something now. It's quite adequate. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by how this jacket kept me warm outside. The materials obviously have a lot to do with that. This is a goose down filled puffer. The down has a fill power of 600, and I'm not going to go into the technical aspects of what fill power means, but essentially the higher the fill power, the more efficient the down is going to be at keeping you warm. Fill power alone cannot tell you how warm a jacket will be though. Even if you have a jacket with say 800 fill power, but the manufacturer only puts a teeny tiny little bit of it in, that jacket is not going to be very warm. This jacket doesn't feel like it has a massive amount of down in it, plus it's only 600 fill power, so in really cold temperatures it's not going to afford you a lot of protection. However, I can't really fault Lululemon for that because that's not what it was designed to do. It was designed to be worn by people accepting a medal, which presumably is not a super long process and may even happen inside, I'm not sure. The rest of the jacket is primarily polyester. Now, polyester is certainly not a premium fiber, however it is very common in outerwear, so I'm not surprised to see it. Now, in terms of construction and features, it doesn't have a whole lot of bells and whistles. This Lululemon jacket has one zippered pocket inside, one mesh pocket inside, and then these super puffy welt pockets with a zipper on the outside for your hands or storing stuff or whatever. But what it does have going for it is that all of it is very clean. The top stitching, immaculate. The bar tacks, which are there to add some reinforcement and stress points, some of the most beautiful I've seen. This little facing at the hem that encloses the lining and the outer shell seams, edge stitched to perfection. So this coat doesn't do much, but what it does do, it does extremely well. Lastly, aesthetics and how things look are part of a design, so let's discuss that. They did try to be a little bit original with the design, which I don't think translated super well in photographs, unfortunately. So overlay it on top of the coat itself is this mesh layer with a grid pattern. This looks to me to be a type of ripstop, which has these 3D raised squares on it that kind of prevent any rips or tears in the fabric from propagating and making a really big rip in your coat. I kind of like how they have the ripstop as a layer over top. It adds some dimension to the coat. I've never seen that done before. That said, if you think it's ugly, I completely get it. Sometimes my appreciation of little technical details like this make me overlook the ugliness of an item. The actual body of the jacket has some kind of swirl motif in different shades of red. I don't actually know what this was inspired by or what it's supposed to be. Maybe if I read up a bit more on the inspiration, I might like it a bit better. The jacket costs about $500 Canadian. Do I think it's worth the price? That is like the absolute most I would say it's worth. Anything more than like 550, I'd be like, what are y'all doing? The only exception would be if it were made in Canada, which I don't think it is, in which case I could understand a slightly higher price point. That said, there are a lot of components that go into making a winter jacket, even a simple one like this. They clearly had skilled operators who were not being forced to rush through things. You could tell by how nice everything looks. You also pay a little bit more for real down. And of course, you could find a down puffer for less than this, but it is the Olympics, it's limited edition, so of course you're going to pay a little bit of a premium for that as well. So overall, I would say this Team Canada jacket gets a pass for construction and materials, it gets a pass for keeping me decently warm outside, and it just gets a pass on price point. Next up is Team France. Their kit is by Le Coq Sportif, which essentially translates to the sporty rooster. Now, this is a quilted vest. It's a little layering piece that athletes can wear out and about in the village or to events where they're not competing. Here's what it looks like at the back and from the inside. It's very basic. There are no interior pockets or anything like that. Let's see how it holds up in some real world conditions. This is definitely one of the stupider things I've ever done. It's minus 20 degrees Celsius. That's about minus 5 Fahrenheit for those of you south of the border. I can't even talk, it's so cold. And I am on a Lord damn Ferris wheel. This thing's actually going pretty fast. We're stopped at the top. I survived. Obviously, this vest is not doing very much to keep me warm. It is helping a little bit, but it's mostly just to be cute at this point. You know what? It actually did help, this vest. I think my back and my trunk would have been a lot colder if I hadn't had it. It's a good little layering piece, actually. It did not help my hands or feet stay warm, though, so I'm gonna get inside as soon as humanly possible. Maybe have a little Tim Hortons first to warm up. That was insane. I still can't believe I did that. So obviously the vest was not super helpful at protecting me from the cold. Although it did help a little bit, I would have been colder without it. And believe me, in conditions like that where not only is the air temperature cold, but it's windy and there's no sun and you're sitting up high in the air, you're thankful for any layer that you can get. That said, there are a lot of layers that would have been better than this one. This vest is quite thin, and it's filled with a synthetic insulation made of polyester instead of down. Now, some synthetic insulation can perform quite well. I suspect this one probably doesn't. And again, because it's thin, there just is not a lot of it. I will say I do quite like the trims. There is a stiff little off-white rib knit at the collar, very chic. And this gathered panel at the sides stretches out and allows for some adjustability in sizing. In terms of the fit overall, it is unisex sizing. Unisex sizing has its pros and cons, but typically what it means in my experience is this is men's sizing and the women will just have to deal with it. You can see that this is quite roomy in the armhole area on me. Obviously though, in this specific case, this is meant to be a bulky vest with stretchy side panels. So it's not the end of the world that it doesn't fit perfectly. It's not meant to be really fitted anyway. The seaming is not as flawless on this one. There are loose threads in a lot of places. The edges of the armhole and the hem of the body of the jacket, when they feed into the binding, it is very gathered, and not in a way that looks intentional to me, more in a way of these pattern pieces were maybe not sized 100% correctly to allow them to fit into the binding nicely. And like, would I do better? No, I would not. If I were to make this vest, it would probably look a whole lot worse than this, to be honest. But when I'm making a garment just for funsies, I'm doing everything. The pattern making, the fit testing, the sewing, all of it. Whereas when it's a company, they have teams of people for all of these functions. Anyway, it's not horrible. The top stitching at these pockets looks quite nice. And the pocket is lined with a little fleece. I just noticed that. That's always nice. Overall, I think it's reasonably cute. This vest cost 165 euros, which is 235 American. Being in Canada, I paid 320 Canadian. Similar to the Lululemon jacket, this is like the upper limit of what I would consider to be an acceptable price point for this item. I would feel differently if I knew it was made in a country where labor costs were high, or if I knew that workers in the supply chain were paid above average wages. I have no reason to assume that the latter is true. And I know that this is made in China where labor costs are not as high as in, Western Europe, for instance. Really quickly, made in China does not mean bad quality, okay? If something is bad quality, it's because the brand wanted it to be or didn't want to pay for it to be good quality. That has nothing to do with what country it's manufactured in. Anyway, to go back to the price point, it's fine. It gets a pass. Initially, I was going to give this a pass on craftsmanship and materials, but you know what? I'm feeling mean today, and also the other countries' kits set the bar really high, so I'm gonna give it a fail. I feel like I can't really give it a pass on the keeping you warm part, but it wasn't designed to do that. It's mostly a layering piece that is designed to be cute and maybe a tiny bit warm. So maybe we'll just ignore that category for this one. I'm sure Team France's opening ceremonies and podium jackets would perform a lot better in that regard. Let's move on to Team USA. All right, if you thought the Ferris wheel thing was stupid, well, now I'm trying to cross-country ski on downhill skis. And I don't even have poles, because how am I supposed to film and use poles at the same time? It is nowhere near as cold today, only about -7 degrees Celsius, but I'm wearing Team USA's opening ceremony sweater, and I cannot tell you how impressed I am by this. First of all, I really appreciate that instead of using typical synthetic sportswear fabric, they used a natural fiber, 100% wool. I don't know what ply of yarns they were using for this. I'm really not that much of a knitwear expert. I'm not a knitwear expert at all, in fact. But this has heft to it. This is warm. I'm not even wearing my winter coat right now, and of course a winter coat does prevent wind penetration a little bit better. Like, this obviously has gaps in between the yarns where wind can get through. But because it's not very cold today, that literally does not even matter. Like, the heft on this thing is such that I am warm right now, and if I were truly skiing out here, I think I'd be working up a sweat in this thing. I could survive some kind of snowpocalypse in this. So as you can tell, I'm extremely impressed by this piece. It's a fully fashioned Fair Isle-esque wool sweater designed by Ralph Lauren. Fully fashioned means that it was not cut from fabric and sewn. A knitwear pattern maker made the pattern for each piece, and then the knitting machine operator programmed the machine to knit each piece individually out of the yarn. And then the pieces were joined together by a knitting machine as well, which is what I assume is happening here. This is considered to be a higher end way of doing knitwear than, say, a hoodie or a sweatshirt like the one I'm wearing, where you cut the pattern pieces out of the fabric and then sew them together. That's cheaper knitwear. So this baby is nice. And holy crow, is she ever heavy. Again, I don't know what weight or ply of yarn they used, but it is very weighty, meaning that they had to use a lot of fiber, and wool is not cheap. So that brings me to talking about the price. This was $700 US, completely worth it in my opinion. Again, it is 100% wool. There is a lot of it, and wool ain't cheap. Furthermore, it's apparently made in USA, and obviously labor costs are higher in the US than in a lot of countries. And I love that they did that, because why would you not want to encourage your local manufacturing during an event like this, where patriotism, as much as it's not my cup of tea, is kind of the point. Also, because it's the Olympics, people are willing to shell out a bit more and pay more of a premium for a collector's item like this. So if the labor is going to cost more, well, so be it. People will pay that cost. I would have loved to see the rest of the kit. I love that it was all wool. And obviously this sweater is a little bit ostentatious with the giant American flag on it, which is, you know, to be expected. It is the Olympics. But the overall vibe of this, like, Fair Isle style of sweater makes me think of a much chicer era of ski wear. Like, if you've seen the Pink Panther movie that was filmed in Cortina in the 60s, the two leading women are dressed by Yves Saint Laurent, and they look so incredibly sumptuous. Anyway, Team USA definitely gets a huge pass on craftsmanship and materials, on keeping you warm outdoors, and on price. I know some fashion critics didn't like it, but I stand by my assessment. Lastly, we have the Netherlands, and wow, I was not expecting the Netherlands to go this hard. I am so impressed by this piece by Denham. I'm not sure of the pronunciation exactly. I was not familiar with this brand, but I am definitely going to get familiar because clearly they care about quality. So this is a little varsity jacket, which I find incredibly chic and appreciate for the fact that, you know, it's not like a basic puffer or other basic athletic wear that a lot of kits have. But not only that, the materials, I would say, are quite high quality. The body is made of wool. It is very sumptuous and weighty. Totally would have expected it to be like acrylic or polyester, but nope, they used real wool for the body apparently. The sleeves are a synthetic leather, which obviously doesn't have the quality or the prestige of a real leather, but that would have put the price point somewhere insane, so I guess I understand why they didn't do that. They used heavy-duty seams with multiple lines of stitching in a lot of places, which is particularly important on a piece like this, where the fabric is very weighty and there's no stretch to it. You want those stress points to be secure. So it looks like these might be flat felt seams here at the shoulder seams. That's a seam commonly seen on jeans. Very durable. At the sleeves, it looks like they used double needle top stitching. Other places on the jacket that aren't under as much stress, like the collar and the hem, have a single line of top stitching, and it all looks very immaculate. This jacket is just so clean in general. The embroideries are very clean, and believe me, in my day job where I work as a uniform designer, so workwear uniforms for people who, you know, work on a construction site or in a conservation area, things like that. And yeah, I have seen some pretty scary embroideries where letters or logos are like kind of blending together. These ones are nice. The welt pockets are beautiful too. Like, look at the evenness of these two welts. Gorgeous. There's not a whole lot going on the inside. They do have this one buttoned pocket. I would say the lining looks nice. It's a little quilted situation. Not particularly exciting, but the star of the show really is the exterior. In terms of fit, this jacket is freaking massive. I have to assume it must be unisex sizing because this is only a small, but it is huge. I'm not doing a winter activity for this one. Sorry guys, I went too hard on the other ones. I'm tired now, I need to rest. But from what I can tell, it seems fit for purpose. It's quite hefty and I think it would keep somebody warm in 0-degree weather. That's 32 for my Fahrenheit friends. Possibly even a little bit cooler if, you know, it was a sunny day and depending on what you were layering underneath it. In terms of price point, it was $580 US. That obviously feels expensive for a varsity jacket, but I think a lot of us are used to, frankly, not well made, lightweight, crappy varsity jackets. In this case, given the quality of the construction, the fact that they use wool, and you know, the fact that it is an Olympics limited edition item that you're gonna pay a bit of a premium for, I personally think it's quite reasonable. Alright, let's do a little best and worst, shall we? I'm going to give the US and the Netherlands a tie for best. I like how they both used wool. I like how the garments themselves were not typical basic athletic wear. And the quality of the construction really was quite high. Next up is Canada. It is a pretty simple puffer jacket, however the construction is quite immaculate. In terms of the design, I initially thought it was kind of boring, but the more I looked at it, the more I began to appreciate its aesthetic sensibility. Lastly is France. Now this is maybe partially on me because I probably should have bought an actual jacket in order to have more of an apples to apples comparison. But anyway, I was not that impressed with this vest. The construction was just okay and the design was quite simple. Alright, that's enough of me ranting and raving. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next video.